Victoria changed our locks during David's funeral. I stood there holding my son's memorial program, still wearing my black suit, and watched this 29-year-old woman I'd called daughter for 3 years unlock what used to be my front door. She'd driven straight from the cemetery to a hardware store. "You have 10 minutes to get your stuff, old man," she said, not even looking at me. This is my house now. I could have argued, could have begged, could have reminded her that David and I built that deck together last summer, that his childhood room still held his Little League trophies. Instead, I smiled. Just a small one. The kind I used to give suspects who thought they were smarter than 30 years of federal training. She had no idea what she'd just activated. "Hello, my name's Dr. Leonard Hayes, and for 30 years I hunted digital ghosts for the Department of Justice. You know the kind. Men in suits who never touch the gun, just the money. Hackers who steal from hospitals. Charities that look holy on paper but rot underneath. I'd spent most of my life staring at code, not people, because code never lied to me. When I retired at 60, I thought I'd left that world behind. My son David told me, 'Dad, you've spent your life catching bad guys. Time to fix the deck and burn some burgers.' So that's what we did, one father and son, two stubborn bachelors with too many tools and too few recipes. David had his mother's eyes, soft but sharp. He was 34, an engineer, built his own startup called Neuralink Systems. Some kind of brain interface tech I never fully understood. His wife, Victoria, was 29, smart, camera-ready, always with a perfect smile and a phone in her hand. She was good at people. David was good at machines. I guess they balanced each other. At least that's what I told myself. After my wife passed, I used to tell folks David was my reason for still getting up in the morning. He'd laugh and say, "That's pressure, Dad." But it wasn't pressure. It was pride. The summer before the accident, we rebuilt the back deck together. I remember the smell of sawdust and the sound of country radio coming from his phone. He'd stop every now and then to check an email, kiss Victoria on the cheek, then come back to measuring boards with me. He said he wanted the deck ready for their first anniversary party. I joked that if he ever needed a side hustle, we could open Hayes & Son Carpentry. He laughed. I didn't know that'd be the last summer I'd hear that laugh. 3 months later, David was gone. Single car accident on a rainy night. They said he probably swerved to avoid a deer. The phone call came just after midnight. I don't remember hanging up. I just remember the way the world sounded when I realized there was no one left to call me Dad. The funeral was held on a Thursday. The church smelled of lilies and wet coats. Victoria wore black, a designer dress, not a single tear. I told myself people grieve differently. She gave a short speech about David's innovative legacy and how his work at Neuralink would continue in his honor. Not once did she mention love, just legacy. When it was over, I stayed behind after everyone left. I touched the side of his coffin and whispered, "I'll keep an eye on her, son. Don't you worry." Turns out that's exactly what she was counting on. That afternoon, I drove back to the house, David's house. My house too, technically, though I never made a fuss about paperwork. I still had my key on my ring. When I got to the front porch, I noticed something strange, a brand new lock. Shiny. Different color. The welcome mat was gone. I rang the bell. She opened the door, holding a box cutter in one hand and her phone in the other. Her eyes were red but dry. "Victoria?" I said softly. "You shouldn't be here, Leonard," she said flatly. "David left everything to me." I blinked. "I just came to grab a few of his things and his tools, his watch maybe." She cut me off. "You have 10 minutes to get your stuff, old man. This is my house now." I stared at her for a long time. I could have argued, could have begged, could have reminded her that David and I built that deck together last summer, that his childhood bedroom still had his Little League trophies. Instead, I smiled. Just a small one. The kind I used to give suspects who thought they were smarter than 30 years of federal training. She frowned. "What's funny?" "Nothing," I said. "Just déjà vu." I walked past her into the living room. The air smelled like new paint and expensive perfume. She'd already started changing things. Photos gone, David's guitar missing from its stand. There was a box by the door with a few of my belongings in it. An old jacket, a coffee mug that said #1 Dad, and a folded flag from my DOJ retirement ceremony. That was her version of mercy. When I picked up the box, she crossed her arms. "You're lucky I didn't have the sheriff do this." I looked her straight in the eye. You're lucky I'm too tired to care right now. For a moment, something flickered in her expression. Maybe fear, maybe just impatience. Then she shut the door behind me. It clicked twice. A new lock. The door that closed behind me that day wasn't just made of wood and steel. It was the sound of every mistake I'd made as a father. I stood there on the porch holding that cardboard box like a funeral urn, watching through the window as she poured herself a glass of champagne. Then I looked down at my reflection in the glass pane. Guess we both lost something today, I murmured. I turned and walked down the steps, the weight of my son's key still warm in my pocket. I didn't know what I'd do next. Not yet. But as I passed the mailbox, I saw the nameplate she'd already replaced. Carter Residence. I smiled again, just slightly. The kind of smile that says you think it's over. It's only begun. The motel room smelled like bleach and loneliness. $49 a night. Single bed. Flickering TV that only caught half the channels. The kind of place where time doesn't move, it just hums. I didn't unpack much. A few shirts, my laptop, and a small framed photo of David on our old deck, holding a hammer like it was a trophy. I'd promised myself I wouldn't go back to the world of digital sleuthing. But when you spend 3 decades chasing men who hide behind code, you don't forget how to read a ghost trail. The first few nights, I just sat staring at that photo, thinking about how quiet everything had gotten. No calls, no texts, no sound except the motel ice machine coughing down the hall. Grief has a way of making you believe the world stopped with your heartbeat, but it doesn't. The world moves on, sometimes faster than it should. By the end of the week, I started noticing small things that didn't sit right. David's car, gone from the driveway when I drove by. The mailbox replaced with a new one bearing Victoria's name alone. Even his email, the memorial address we set up for condolences, started sending out updates about the David Carter Foundation, not Hayes. I remember thinking, she moves fast. Too fast. I checked the obituaries page online just to see if she'd made any edits to the memorial listing. Instead, I found a new press release. Her name, David's photo. The headline, Widow of Tech Innovator Announces Plans to Expand Neuralink Systems. That was the moment I stopped crying and started thinking. The next morning, I brewed motel coffee so bad it could have qualified as a crime scene and opened my old laptop, the one with DOJ encryption still sitting quietly on its hard drive. Habit kicked in. Fingers steady, eyes sharp, mind clean. I started where I always did, minding the metadata. Neuralink's website had a new contact page, registered 2 days after David's funeral. The server was based in Singapore. The SSL certificate listed one administrator, Victoria L. Carter. The phone number? Registered to a shell company out of Delaware. People think fraud starts with big moves. Fake documents, stolen checks. It doesn't. It starts with the tiniest digital footprints. Someone updates an email at 2 a.m. Someone logs in from a different time zone. Someone lies to a form they think no one reads. Victoria had left breadcrumbs everywhere. By midweek, I'd built a little digital map, all her online accounts, her business ties, every login pattern I could find. Nothing illegal, not yet, but patterns don't lie. And hers screamed preparation. She wasn't grieving. She was building something new and fast. One night I parked outside David's old house, her house now. Lights were on. I watched from the street as men in suits came and went, carrying laptops and folders. A catering van idled out front. She was hosting. A week after burying my son, I didn't go to the door. Just sat in the car, hands on the wheel, heart in my throat. I could almost hear David laughing, saying, "Dad, you always taught me, don't chase anger. Follow the evidence." So I followed. Next morning, I searched public property records. The deed to the house had transferred 3 days after the funeral. Electronic signature, David's name, time-stamped 1 day after his death. My breath froze mid-air, there it was. The first crack. I called an old friend, Monica Ruiz, a DOJ colleague who'd retired a year before me. Sharp as a tack, always 3 steps ahead. "Monica," I said, "you ever seen a will get notarized after a man's buried?" She chuckled softly, then heard the tone in my voice. "Leonard, what's going on?" "Something stinks," I said. "And it smells like toner ink and greed." She was quiet a beat. "You want me to take a look?" "Not yet. I just need to know I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy," she said. "But be careful." Grief and justice look a lot alike when you're standing too close. That line stuck with me. Over the next few days, I started building what I used to call a shadow file, a private record of everything. Screenshots, timestamps, name changes, login alerts. I wasn't ready to take her down, not yet, but I needed to understand the full shape of what she'd done. Then one morning, while cross-checking Neuralink's financial filings, I found something that made my stomach drop. A transfer, $62,000, from the company account to a personal one listed under Victoria L. Carter. The memo line said, "Consulting fees." But I knew David never paid himself a dime that way. That's when it hit me. She hadn't just taken my son's house. She was bleeding his company dry. I closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long time. The motel AC rattled like an old heartbeat. Outside, the world looked exactly the same. Cars driving by, neon signs flickering. But something inside me shifted. The part of me that had been a father went quiet. The part that had been an investigator woke up. I poured myself another cup of that awful coffee, turned the laptop back on, and whispered, "All right, Victoria, let's see what you left behind in the shadows." I've always believed that computers are like people. They lie, but never perfectly. They always leave something behind. The morning I started digging for real, I brewed a pot of coffee that could peel paint and powered up 3 laptops. My old DOJ issued one, a backup I'd kept in storage, and a burner I bought from a pawn shop off Route 19. I wasn't hacking. Not yet. I was remembering. My name's Dr. Leonard Hayes, and for 30 years, I lived in the world behind the screen, the one where truth hides in code and criminals hide in plain sight. And Victoria Carter, my late daughter's widow, had just stepped into my world. The first clue came from something simple, a digital receipt buried in one of Neuralink's cloud backups. It was labeled Consulting Fees, Bright Mind Labs. The invoice looked professional, watermark, date, everything. But I noticed the file's metadata had a creation date 2 weeks before David's death, and the company domain had been purchased the next day after the funeral. I smiled. Tiny, quiet, sharp. "You made your first mistake, Victoria," I muttered. "You lied to the calendar." I cross-referenced her invoices with bank statements. One transaction jumped out, 7,480 repeated 32 times over 6 months. Same number, same day of the week, same memo line. Vendor services. Criminals have habits, patterns. Repetition is comfort to a guilty mind. I ran the vendor's registration. Bright Mind Labs was a shell. Registered in Delaware, owned by Sophie Lang. Name rang a bell. I checked social media. There she was, smiling beside Victoria at a Tech Visionaries Under 35 gala, arm hooked around my daughter's husband. I leaned back in my chair. And there's your partner in crime. By the second week, Monica Ruiz was in. I sent her a flash drive via courier labeled Tax Records 2019. Inside was a full audit of Neuralink's internal database, copied before they changed my access. Monica called that night. "Leonard," she said, "you've got the start of a full-blown fraud case. You sure you want to go down this road?" I buried my daughter, Monica. Then I watched her husband turn her life's work into a payday. So yes, I'm going down that road. She paused, then chuckled softly. Then let's leave breadcrumbs he won't see until it's too late. We built a digital ledger, a quiet, invisible file that tracked every document, transaction, and server update connected to Victoria and Sophie's shell companies. Each time they moved money, we mirrored the transaction, tagging it with GPS pings, device IDs, and timestamp chains. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Every fraudulent transfer went through a private VPN located in Zurich, but the originating IPs were domestic. Ryan Carter, the grieving husband, was laundering charity funds through overseas tech contracts, using Sophie's shell companies as filters. I remember the exact moment it became undeniable. A 3:47 a.m. access log. Ryan's username. Same keyboard fingerprint. Connecting to Neuralink's charity accounts, initiating a $94,000 partnership donation to CoreStream Analytics, Sophie's second company. That was the breadcrumb that tied them both. I printed everything. Hard copies. Dated sealed in envelopes, old school style. Evidence ages better on paper. Then I called Monica. "Time to build the story," I said. "Not for court yet." For the public, you mean press? She asked. Exactly. I'll make the first move. But when the light hits, the feds will follow. She sighed, half admiring, half worried. You always did like fireworks, Leonard. Only when they expose cockroaches. I drafted a dossier, 50 pages of data, screenshots, and financial cross-links, every breadcrumb connected. But this time I didn't sign my name. I sent it anonymously to the Wall Street Ledger, a publication that never ignored fraud stories, especially ones with clean digital trails. And then I waited. Days passed. Nights were long. But when I saw the Ledger's homepage flash the headline, Millions Missing from Late Innovators Foundation, Whistleblower Exposes Digital Fraud, I knew the fuse was lit. The next morning, Victoria and Ryan's names were trending, not for their innovation, but for embezzlement. And as I closed my laptop, I whispered, You shouldn't have changed those locks, Victoria. You just locked yourselves in. I'd been invited by accident. Victoria had decided to throw a housewarming at the home she'd stolen. My home, the one I'd helped David renovate last spring, the one where my daughter's voice still lived in the paint on the walls. The invitation was public, her way of showing off. New beginnings, the flyer said, all gold font and filtered smiles. The guest list? Investors, local press, and a few of David's old colleagues. The same people who once watched him cry at my kitchen table when he was diagnosed. Now, they'd walk through those same rooms, sipping champagne, while Victoria posed beside my daughter's framed degrees. I wasn't angry anymore. Just ready. That night, I put on the same black suit I'd worn to David's funeral. I walked to the front door, the same one she'd once locked in my face, and rang the bell. Victoria opened it herself, holding a wine glass and flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said, if it isn't the ghost of tenants past. I gave a polite nod. Nice remodel. Though the hardwood scratches easy when you drag new furniture across it. Her jaw tightened. Make it quick, Leonard. I've got guests. Oh, I won't be long, I said softly. Just came to return something that belongs to you. She frowned as I held up a small USB drive. Consider it a housewarming gift. The crowd inside buzzed with polite laughter and the clink of glasses. Ryan stood near the fireplace, mid-speech, charming the room. He wore David's old watch. My stomach turned. Emily Hayes's legacy, he said, isn't just technology. It's the future we're building together through Neuralink and the Foundation. Applause. Cameras flashed. That was my cue. I stepped toward the center of the room, calm as a man crossing a quiet street. Mind if I show a quick video? I said loud enough for the guest to hear. Ryan blinked. Leonard, this isn't... But I'd already moved to the projector connected to the big screen TV. Plugged in the USB. One click. The lights dimmed as the file began to play. On screen appeared a split display. Neuralink's Foundation account on the left, and BrightMind Labs bank account on the right. Each transaction matched line for line, 7,480, 7480, 7480, then a scrolling feed of metadata timestamps. Everyone signed with Ryan Carter's digital ID. Whispers filled the room. Phones came out. Someone gasped. Then came the clincher, surveillance footage from the Foundation's bank branch. Ryan in a Navy suit, depositing checks marked vendor payment, Sophie Lang, frame by frame, time-stamped. Dated 2 weeks after my daughter's death. Ryan's face drained of color. Victoria dropped her glass. It shattered on the tile. I looked at them both. Calm, steady. You forged my daughter's will, I said, voice low but carrying. You stole her name, her money, her purpose, and you did it thinking no one would notice. The guests backed away, murmuring. The hum of shame filled the air like static. Leonard, Ryan stammered. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I cut him off. I spent 30 years tracking people like you. And I taught the system how to find digital fingerprints before you even learned to type. Behind him, the front door opened. 2 men in suits, DOJ badges flashing in the light. Monica Ruiz stepped in after them, tablet in hand. Ryan Carter. Victoria Carter, she said, clear and professional. You're under arrest for wire fraud, document forgery, and embezzlement, a reporter whispered. Oh my God, as flashbulbs popped, Ryan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Victoria started to cry, but it wasn't grief. It was panic. As the agents read them their rights, I stepped aside, watching. The guests were silent now, the kind of silence that only truth can make. I looked at Monica. She met my eyes, gave the slightest nod, the kind that said, "It's done." When they led Ryan out, he turned once, searching my face for mercy. I just said, "Emily's foundation is clean again. You won't touch another dollar." And then I turned my back. The air smelled of spilled wine and disinfectant, like endings. I slipped the USB into my pocket, and as I passed the photo of my daughter on the wall, I whispered, "Justice served, kiddo. You can rest now." All right, before we jump to the end of the story, I've got a tiny request for you. If you find this awesome tale entertaining, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Now we continue. The house stayed quiet for a long time after the arrests. I came back a week later, not because I wanted to, but because closure needs to be earned in the same place the wound began. The locks were replaced again, this time by the city trustee handling the seizure. The rooms were stripped of the pretense Victoria and Ryan had built. Funny thing, without the candles, the expensive art, or the noise, it felt like David's home again. I stood in his old office, where Emily's photo still sat under a thin layer of dust. Her smile, that half-crooked grin she got from me, stared back like she already knew how this would end. "You always said code doesn't lie, kiddo," I murmured. "Turns out you were right. Ryan pled guilty within a month. 22 months in federal custody, restitution in full, and barred from handling charity funds ever again. Victoria flipped early, of course. Sold him out for leniency, didn't matter. They'd already lost the one thing you can't buy back: integrity. When the case closed, Monica handed me a folder. "You did it, Leonard." "You actually did it," I shook my head. "No, we just cleaned up what shouldn't have needed cleaning. Emily did it. Her name stays pure," she smiled. "What'll you do now?" I thought about that for a moment. For the first time in years, I didn't have a case to chase. No more code to decrypt, just silence. And the echo of my daughter's laugh in the back of my head. "I think I'll rebuild the foundation," I said finally. But smaller, smarter, quiet this time. We called it the Emily Hayes Research Trust, stripped of all the branding and hype, just her mission left intact. Every donation, every transaction, every byte of data was public, transparent, and traceable. It became the cleanest ledger I'd ever designed, my final piece of code. Sometimes when I sit in the office we built downtown, I look at the foundation's homepage and watch the live donation log update line by line. Real people giving real hope. No middlemen, no secrets. It's strange. After decades of chasing criminals, it took losing my son and my daughter to finally understand what peace looks like. Not applause, not revenge, just quiet truth. Last week, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a handwritten note. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I understand now what I did. I'm sorry. Ryan, I read it once, then set it on the corner of my desk. I didn't tear it up. Didn't frame it either. Some things don't need closure. They just need to stop echoing." That evening, I locked the office and walked through the city. The sunset hit the windows of the high-rises like orange fire, same color Emily loved to photograph. For a moment, I heard her voice again. "Dad, don't chase ghosts. Build something instead." I smiled. Small. Quiet. The kind I hadn't used in a long time. When I got home, I powered down my laptop and scribbled one line in my old DOJ notebook before closing it for good. She built technology to save lives. I used technology to save her name. Then I turned off the light, and for the first time in years, the silence felt like peace.